I was sitting on my porch watching the sunrise over Pine Lake when I heard the heavy machinery rolling up my gravel driveway. 3 trucks, 2 guys in hard hats, and 1 woman in a business suit who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. The woman walked up to my cabin carrying a clipboard and wearing the kind of fake smile that immediately puts you on guard. "Mr. Harrison? I'm Jennifer Walsh from Pine Lake Estates HOA. We're here to disconnect your water service." I took a slow sip of my coffee and stayed in my rocking chair. "Morning to you too, Jennifer. Mind if I ask why you think you can shut off my water? You've been in violation of community water usage regulations for 6 months. Multiple notices have been sent. Since you've failed to respond, we're implementing service termination." I looked at the guys with the hard hats who were already walking toward my water line with their tools. Then I looked back at Jennifer. "You might want to call those boys back before they make a mistake they'll regret." "Mr. Harrison, I understand you're upset, but the HOA board has voted unanimously. Your water usage exceeds community standards, and your cabin doesn't meet the aesthetic requirements for lakefront properties." That's when I started laughing. Not a chuckle, a full belly laugh that echoed across the lake. "Jennifer, you have no idea what you just walked into. See, here's what Jennifer Walsh and the Pine Lake Estates HOA didn't know about me. My name is Robert Harrison and I'm a retired municipal engineer. I spent 35 years designing and building water systems for cities across 3 states. More importantly, I'm the guy who designed and built the entire water infrastructure for this lake community back in 1987. Every pipe, every pump, every valve that brings water to the fancy houses in Pine Lake Estates, I put them there. And according to the original development contracts that I wrote myself, I own them. But let me back up and tell you how I ended up in this situation. 5 years ago, I inherited my grandfather's old fishing cabin on Pine Lake. The place hadn't been used in years and needed a lot of work, but it sat on 2 acres of prime lakefront property that my family had owned since the 1940s. When I retired from the city engineering department, I decided to fix up the cabin and make it my permanent home. Peaceful lake, good fishing, and far enough from the city to avoid all the noise and traffic. The cabin was off the grid when I inherited it. Well water, septic system, propane for heat. But I wanted modern conveniences, so I applied to connect to the community water system that served the newer houses around the lake. That's when I discovered something interesting in my old files. Back in 1987, I'd been hired by Lakeside Development Corporation to design the water infrastructure for their new Pine Lake Estates subdivision. It was a big project. 37 luxury homes, community facilities, and all the underground utilities to support them. The development company had a problem though. They needed to run their main water line across a section of undeveloped land to connect to the county system. That land belonged to my grandfather. Instead of buying the land or negotiating an easement, they made my grandfather a deal. He'd grant them permanent access to run utilities across his property, and in exchange he'd become the owner of the entire water distribution system once it was built. It was an unusual arrangement, but it worked for everyone. The development company got their access, my grandfather got ownership of a valuable infrastructure asset, and the homeowners got reliable water service. The contracts were written, signed, and filed with the county. When my grandfather died, ownership of the water system transferred to me along with the cabin and the land. For 3 years, everything worked fine. I connected my cabin to the system I owned, paid myself a reasonable rate for water service, and minded my own business. The HOA ran the subdivision and I ran my water system. Then came the new HOA board. The trouble started when Jennifer Walsh got elected HOA president. She'd moved to Pine Lake Estates from California with her hedge fund manager husband, and she had big plans for upgrading the community standards. Jennifer's first target was my cabin. It was old, rustic, and didn't fit the aesthetic she wanted for the lakefront properties. She started sending me letters about property improvements, architectural guidelines, and community enhancement requirements. I ignored them all. My property wasn't part of their HOA, and I had no intention of changing my cabin to match their cookie-cutter houses. That's when Jennifer discovered that my cabin was connected to their water system. The first official letter arrived on a Tuesday. Pine Lake Estates HOA was conducting a comprehensive review of water usage throughout the community. My consumption was significantly above acceptable levels, and my connection was unauthorized. I called the number on the letter. "Jennifer, this is Bob Harrison. I got your letter about water usage." "Mr. Harrison, yes. We need to schedule an inspection of your property to determine how to bring your usage into compliance." "There's nothing to inspect. I own the water system." There was a long pause. "Excuse me?" I own the pipes, the pumps, and the infrastructure that brings water to your community. I've been paying myself for water service for 3 years. That's impossible. The HOA manages all community utilities. The HOA manages whatever the homeowners gave them authority over. The water system belongs to me. Another pause. Mr. Harrison, I think there's been some confusion. I'm going to need to see documentation. Happy to provide it. But first, you need to understand something. If you keep harassing me about water usage, I might have to raise the rates for the whole community. Jennifer hung up on me. 2 weeks later, I got a certified letter from the HOA's attorney. Legal demand to cease unauthorized use of community water systems, disconnect from the municipal supply, and restore exclusive HOA control over water distribution. They were threatening to sue me for stealing water from my own system. I called my old law school buddy Mike Chin, who'd become a real estate attorney after we graduated. Bob, this is either a case of massive incompetence or intentional fraud. Either way, you've got them dead to rights. What should I do? Send them copies of the original contracts. All of them. Make it very clear who owns what, and what happens if they keep pushing this. I spent a day at my old office, pulling files from the Pine Lake project. The original development contracts, the utility easement agreements, the ownership transfer documents, and most importantly, the clause that gave me authority to set rates and terms of service for all water customers. I made copies of everything and sent them to Jennifer and the HOA attorney via certified mail. The cover letter was simple. As owner of the Pine Lake water distribution system, I hereby notify you that any interference with my property or my water service constitutes grounds for immediate termination of service to all HOA properties. That should have been the end of it. Instead, Jennifer doubled down. 3 days later, I got a call from the county water department. Someone had filed a complaint alleging that I was operating an unlicensed water utility and charging illegal rates to community residents. The county inspector was a young guy named Rodriguez who seemed genuinely confused about why he was there. Mr. Harrison, I've reviewed your documentation and everything appears to be in order. Your system meets all state standards, and your rates are actually below market value. So why are we here? Well, the complainant alleged that you were extorting residents by threatening to cut off water service. Rodriguez, I haven't threatened anyone. I just informed the HOA that I own the system they've been trying to steal. He looked through his paperwork again. Sir, the complaint came from Jennifer Walsh, president of the Pine Lake Estates HOA. She claims you're holding the community hostage. The only hostage situation here is an HOA president who can't read a contract. Rodriguez was decent about it. He spent 2 hours going through my system documentation, inspecting the infrastructure, and reviewing the rate structure. Everything was legal and properly maintained. Mr. Harrison, I don't see any violations here. Your system is actually better maintained than most municipal operations. But a week later, I got a letter from the county. My water utility license was being reviewed due to community concerns about rate fairness and service reliability. Jennifer was escalating, bringing in county officials to pressure me into giving up my water system. That's when I decided to remind everyone who really controlled the water around Pine Lake. I called a community meeting, sent notices to every house in Pine Lake Estates, posted announcements at the community center, and placed an ad in the local paper. Important information about your water service. All residents welcome. 23 homeowners showed up, including Jennifer and 2 other HOA board members. I'd prepared a presentation with maps, contracts, and financial documents. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Robert Harrison, and I'm the owner and operator of the Pine Lake water distribution system. I called this meeting because there seems to be some confusion about how your water service works. I explained the history of the development, the original contracts with my grandfather, and the current ownership structure. I showed them the maps of the pipe network, the maintenance records, and the rate structure. For the past 3 years, you've been receiving high-quality water service at below-market rates. I've maintained the system at my own expense and upgraded the infrastructure when necessary. Then I got to the point. However, your HOA president has been threatening to steal my water system and disconnect my personal service. She's filed false complaints with county officials and harassed me with fake legal demands. Jennifer stood up. Mr. Harrison is misrepresenting the situation. The HOA has always managed community utilities. Jennifer, you manage whatever the homeowners gave you authority to manage. You don't manage my private property, which includes the water system that serves this community. I pulled out the contract documents and read the relevant sections aloud. Several homeowners asked to see copies for themselves. Now, I continued, I want to be clear about something. I have no desire to disrupt your water service or raise your rates unfairly. I'm happy to continue providing reliable service at current rates. However, if the harassment continues, if more false complaints are filed, or if anyone attempts to physically interfere with my water system, I'll be forced to protect my property rights. One of the homeowners raised his hand. What does that mean exactly? It means that as the system owner, I have the legal right to discontinue service to any customer who violates the terms of service, including filing false complaints or attempting to steal my infrastructure. The room got very quiet. Jennifer's face was turning red. You can't threaten to cut off people's water over a civil dispute. Jennifer, I'm not threatening anyone. I'm explaining the legal reality of property ownership. This is my water system and I decide who gets service. After the meeting, several homeowners approached me privately. They were embarrassed by Jennifer's behavior and concerned about the potential impact on their water service. One older gentleman named Frank Peters pulled me aside. Bob, most of us had no idea about the ownership situation. Jennifer told the board that the HOA owned all community utilities. Frank, Jennifer either lied to you or she's completely incompetent. Either way, she's putting your water service at risk. What can we do? You can remove her from the board before she causes real problems. Word spread quickly through the community. Within a week, a petition was circulating to recall Jennifer and the board members who'd supported her anti-Harrison campaign. But Jennifer wasn't going quietly. The following Monday, I woke up to find a crew from Henderson Plumbing trying to install a valve shutoff on my main water line. They were digging up my yard without permission, attempting to install equipment that would allow the HOA to control my water flow. I walked out in my bathrobe and work boots. Morning, boys. What are you doing to my water line? The crew chief looked up from the hole they dug. Installing a shutoff valve. HOA hired us to take control of the community water system. On whose authority? Lady named Jennifer Walsh. She said the HOA was taking over utility management. I pulled out my phone and called the sheriff's office. This is Robert Harrison at 1247 Lakeshore Drive. I've got contractors trespassing on my property and attempting to steal my water infrastructure. Deputy Martinez arrived within 20 minutes. He looked at the partially installed valve, reviewed my property documentation, and asked the Henderson Plumbing crew some pointed questions. Gentlemen, this is private property and that's a private water system. You're committing criminal trespass and attempted theft of utilities. The crew chief looked confused. We were hired by the HOA. They said they owned the system. They lied to you. Pack up your equipment and leave the property immediately. After the plumbers left, Deputy Martinez took a full report and photographed the damage to my yard. Mr. Harrison, you want to press charges against the HOA? Absolutely. Jennifer Walsh hired contractors to steal my water system. That's conspiracy to commit theft. Martinez nodded. We'll investigate and forward the report to the district attorney. But I wasn't waiting for the legal system to sort this out. Jennifer had crossed the line from harassment to attempted theft. Time to remind everyone who controlled the water. That afternoon, I walked to the main valve that controlled water flow to the entire Pine Lake Estates subdivision. It was located on my property in a utility box that I'd installed and maintained for 3 years. I turned off the water to the entire community. My cabin still had water. I'd installed a bypass line years earlier for maintenance purposes. But every house in Pine Lake Estates went dry. The phone call started within an hour. Mr. Harrison, this is Tom Bradley from Oak Street. Our water's been shut off. Tom, I'm aware of that. I shut it off. Why? Because your HOA president hired contractors to steal my water system this morning. I'm protecting my property. How long will it be off? That depends on whether Jennifer Walsh wants to apologize for attempting to steal my infrastructure, or if she wants to keep playing games. By evening, I'd received 47 phone calls from angry residents. Jennifer had called 6 times, each time more hysterical than the last. Mr. Harrison, you can't hold the entire community hostage over a civil dispute. Jennifer, I'm not holding anyone hostage. I'm protecting my property from theft. You hired contractors to steal my water system this morning. That was a legitimate utility management action. That was attempted theft of private property. You want the water back on? Stop trying to steal my system. The HOA will sue you for this. Jennifer, you just tried to steal a water system worth over $2 million. I'm pretty sure a jury will side with me. The next morning, the local newspaper ran a front-page story, Water War Erupts in Pine Lake Estates, HOA President Accused of Attempted Theft. The reporter had interviewed several residents, the Henderson plumbing crew and Deputy Martinez. The story laid out the ownership dispute, the attempted valve installation, and my decision to shut off water service to protect my property. Jennifer was quoted as saying, "Mr. Harrison is a disgruntled resident who's holding the community hostage over a minor utility dispute." I was quoted as saying, "When someone tries to steal your property, you protect it. The water will be restored when the HOA acknowledges that they don't own my infrastructure." By noon, the story had gone viral. Local TV stations picked it up, then regional news outlets. The comment sections were brutal for Jennifer and sympathetic to me. HOA tried to steal man's water system, surprised when he shuts off their water. Property owner fights back against HOA theft attempt. Engineer outsmarts corrupt HOA president. But the real pressure came from the Pine Lake Estates residents themselves. Without water they couldn't shower, cook, or flush toilets. The lucky ones had friends or family they could stay with. Others were stuck buying bottled water and using the bathrooms at the gas station on Highway 9. By Tuesday evening, a group of 20 homeowners had gathered outside Jennifer's house demanding her resignation. Wednesday morning I got a call from Frank Peters. "Bob, the HOA board met in emergency session last night. Jennifer's been removed as president. We'd like to meet with you to resolve this situation." "I'm listening." "We're prepared to formally acknowledge your ownership of the water system, issue a public apology for the attempted theft, and pay for the damage to your property." "What about Jennifer?" "She's been removed from the board entirely. We're also considering legal action against her for misrepresenting the ownership situation." "Frank, I want a written agreement that the HOA will never again attempt to interfere with my water system or my property rights." "Done." "And I want Jennifer personally banned from all HOA activities and barred from any future board positions." "Also done." "Give me the paperwork and I'll turn your water back on." 3 hours later, Frank Peters and 2 other board members brought me a comprehensive agreement. The HOA formally acknowledged my ownership of the water system, apologized for the attempted theft, and committed to paying $15,000 for the damage to my property and legal fees. The agreement also included a clause permanently barring Jennifer Walsh from any HOA positions and requiring her to pay restitution for the unauthorized plumbing work. I signed the agreement and walked to the main valve. 3 days after shutting it off, I restored water service to Pine Lake Estates. But the story wasn't over yet. The district attorney's office had been investigating the attempted theft charge against Jennifer. With the physical evidence, witness statements, and Jennifer's own admissions to the newspaper, they decided to file criminal charges. Jennifer Walsh was arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit theft, criminal trespass, and fraud. Turned out that when she'd hired Henderson Plumbing, she'd represented herself as the legal owner of the water system, which was fraud. The case never went to trial. Jennifer plea bargained to avoid jail time, but she was convicted of attempted theft and ordered to pay full restitution plus court costs. She and her husband moved away from Pine Lake 3 months later. The new HOA board was much more reasonable. Frank Peters became president, and they focused on actual community issues like road maintenance and lake conservation instead of trying to control private property. I continued operating the water system, providing reliable service at fair rates. Several residents even thanked me for standing up to Jennifer's bullying. 6 months later, I got an offer from the county to purchase my water system for $2.8 million. They wanted to incorporate it into their regional water authority. I thought about it for a while. The money would be nice and I was getting older. But in the end I decided to keep my system. It wasn't about the money or the control. It was about the principle. Jennifer Walsh had tried to steal my property using fake authority and corrupt tactics. She counted on me being too old, too tired, or too intimidated to fight back. She was wrong. Now when I sit on my porch in the morning watching the sunrise over Pine Lake, I can hear the gentle hum of my water pumps providing service to the community. It's a satisfying sound, the sound of honest work and legitimate ownership. Jennifer learned that you can't steal what belongs to someone else, no matter how official your letterhead looks or how many lawyers you hire. And the residents of Pine Lake Estates learned something valuable too. When you elect bullies to run your HOA, you might end up without water for 3 days while the grown-ups sort out the mess. The lake is peaceful now. My cabin is exactly the way I want it. And my water system runs perfectly, providing reliable service to customers who respect property rights and honest business. Jennifer tried to cut off my water because she thought she could steal my system. Instead, she learned that when you mess with an engineer's infrastructure, you might just find yourself high and dry. Sometimes the best revenge is simply turning off the valve.